All right, Realistic Randy, Mediokr Best Sports Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Got a couple of suggestions for the National Football League if they're going to make their Pro Bowl weekend a little bit more relevant, and maybe an opportunity for the Minnesota Timberwolves. We'll just have to check that out a little bit later. Realistic Randy, Mediokr Best Sports Podcast. So I didn't even realize that the NFL Pro Bowl was this past weekend because I was too busy getting prepared and too busy getting ready, too busy getting excited for NHL All-Star Weekend, damn it. It was good to see my Washington Capitals represent, even though Ovi wasn't there. I was a little bit ticked off about that. But hey, Braden Holtby and John Carlson was there, and I found myself rooting for Sidney Crosby because I guess in the NHL All-Star game, I went to the All-Star game itself. I went to Fan Fest, too. That was really cool out in San Jose, and I think at the convention center. Put my son, my newborn son, on the Stanley Cup, put him in the Stanley Cup, and took a picture with him. That was really cool. But I went to the All-Star game itself, and I found myself having to root for Sidney Crosby, and I hate Sidney Crosby's guts. Not only because he's a rival, he plays on the Pittsburgh Penguins, but he reminds me of Chris Paul, man. He's like the Chris Paul of the NHL. He's an amazing playmaker, and he can make goals to where the goalie can have one side of the net completely shut off, but he'll find that one little space, kind of like Star Wars where they had that one little space of hole where those galactic laser beams will go in and destroy the whole thing. That's kind of the same thing. Sidney Crosby will find that space and make you pay, but he's a pest. He gets away with so much crap, and I'm like, just like Chris Paul. But anyway, that was really fun to see. That's right, I'm a Washington Capitals fan, damn it. I'm not a bandwagon. I'm from the D.C. area originally, and I've been following the Capitals forever, ever since I've been a little kid. And they were basically, I compare the Capitals to basically like the Indianapolis Colts of the NHL. The Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. You remember they break all these regular season records and then go to the playoffs and just absolutely stink. One and done, or real competition would come along and they just get eliminated. But finally, the Capitals, they got over that hump and they won the championship. I was so happy to see that. But I didn't even realize that the NFL Pro Bowl weekend was that same exact weekend. And I found myself on Sunday, I guess I was watching a replay of the day before, the skills challenge or the skills competition, whatever it is they got going on. And I must admit to you guys, I found myself a little bit, I found myself kind of glued to the TV. Particularly, there was 3 events. I want to make sure I got these names right. It was the gridiron gauntlet, the hands challenge or the hands catching challenge, and then the precision passing challenge, the dodgeball challenge, and the 40-yard splash. I don't know what the hell was about. Those 2 events, I was like, what the hell are you doing? But those other 3 things, especially the precision passing challenge, I saw Russell Wilson. He went out there and lit it up, and I was like, this is actually really cool. I could kind of watch this all day, but I think if you add 2 more events, one of them just came to me. If you add 2 more events, I think that could really take the NFL Pro Bowl. Well, not the Pro Bowl. The game itself is always a joke, and they're always going to dial it back, and I get it. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to risk injury or anything like that, so I get that. But as far as the skills challenge, the skills competition, if you want to really draw in more buzz and draw more viewers to the screen, 2 challenges. What the players like to brag about during the season, right? I'm the fastest player. The 40-yard dash. I think you should have the 40-yard dash with, let's say, Tyreek Hill or Stephon Diggs or somebody else, whoever the hell else. And you can have like a bracket type of challenge, and you can really figure out who is the fastest player in the NFL. And number 2, the other thing that NFL players, love to brag about, specific position groups, is cornerbacks and wide receivers. Cornerbacks, I'm the best cornerback in the league. No one can catch anything on me. Or wide receivers, I'm the best receiver in the game. I can catch anything. Doesn't matter who you line up on me, right? If you saw like a challenge, if we were to see like a one-on-one challenge, wide receiver versus cornerback, and let's say whoever won the battle, let's say best 3 out of 5, and then the winner, whether it's the cornerback or the wide receiver, they can advance. I think you could really see something there as far as drawing in more viewers, because if you have the receivers and the corners go, because they talk trash all year long, this is where they can finally back it up. And the receivers, they don't necessarily have to go with their quarterback. You can go with whatever quarterback you want in the Pro Bowl. Let's say Patrick Mahomes, or you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but say, I want to play with Patrick Mahomes a little bit. So let him throw me the ball. And the quarterback, they'll have, let's say, 3 seconds to throw the ball. I think you could draw a lot more buzz there. And then also speaking about the Pro Bowl, speaking of the NFL Pro Bowl, did you see Jason Witten? Jason Witten just cannot catch a break. He's had a disaster of a broadcasting year last year. And, I'm not trying to pile on the dude, but it's like this dude ended up making a debacle at the Pro Bowl. Basically, he broke the Pro Bowl trophy. If you guys saw the video, the Pro Bowl trophy is like this kind of like little fancy finesse little glass piece at the top, and then there's a big, huge ass base at the bottom. All you have to do, just common sense tells you, lift it up with two hands from the base and hand it to the players. What was that? Patrick Mahomes and the guy from the Jets, Adams, was it, who injured the Patriots mascot, sent them to the hospital off a cheap shot tackle. But all you had to do is lift the trophy by the base and hand it over. Jason Witten not only lifted it by the glass, the finesse piece, he did it with one hand. I think the other hand, he had a microphone. He lifted it with one hand and it broke. This dude just cannot catch a break. I feel bad for him, but at the same time, I found it absolutely hilarious. So anyway, moving on from that, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they lost their last two games, both against the Utah Jazz. Before that, they actually beat the Lakers. So then they went on a 2-game losing streak. And what was interesting is, and I'm not trying to provide any excuses for the T-Wolves or anything like that, but they've been dealing with injuries, man. Let's just call it what it is. You're talking about Robert Covington being out. All your point guards are basically out. You had to run with Jared Bayless. You're talking about Derrick Rose is out, Tyus Jones, Jeff Teague. They're all out. So you're talking about 4 key injuries right there that the Wolves are dealing with, to where Ryan Saunders, he has to reach down his bench, reach down further in his depth chart. You're talking about playing Jared Bayless, and Luol Deng has even been playing for a little bit. So, I kind of feel bad for them. They're having an uphill battle, new coach and all that other stuff. And the first game against Utah, with the injuries aside and new coach and all that stuff aside, that first game against Utah, I think it was at Utah, that was absolutely nuts, because forget the fact that the injuries and everything like that, but Karl-Anthony Towns started the debacle by getting the Wolves in early trouble by getting early fouls. Stupid ass fouls. There was one foul in particular, and I'm talking about multiple stupid fouls. There was one foul in particular that I'm thinking of where Josh Okogie, he deflected what would have been a lob pass to Derek Favors for a slam, but he deflected it, a lob pass from Kyle Korver. Cat came down with the rebound, passed it out. It was a bad pass. Ricky Rubio, he intercepted it and drove to the basket. And at which point, Cat raised his arms up and then gyrated his hips onto Ricky Rubio. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That is a dumbass foul. You're way too smart for that. And despite the early foul troubles that he had, he still ended up with 33 freaking points. So, like, that just goes to show how great of a player that this dude is, and the great player that he's going to continue to be for the rest of his career. But I think all that aside, and there was actually another just weird, that game was just weird because there was a couple of non-fouls, especially on Andrew Wiggins, where he got hacked, man. There was one where I'm thinking of where he drove to the basket and he was taking like slap shot after slap shot on the forearms. Nothing. No call. I'm like, what are you doing? And then the Jazz, they got the ball back, and I think Joe Ingles was going to the basket, and he got fouled, a weak-ass foul, and Taj Gibson was heated. And I don't blame him. Normally, I'm like, hey, get over it. It's the refs. It's whatever. I actually am going to stick by Taj Gibson on this one. I actually appreciate the fact that he stuck up for his teammates. He went on a profanity rant, dished out 3 magical words to the referee. And I'm like, I'm not all about name calling, but I get the passion behind that right there. That was some BS right there by those officials. And then even in the second game, where they didn't even call it over the back early in the game on Rudy Gobert, what he did to Josh Okogie, where he did a putback dunk, Rudy Gobert did, but in the process jumped behind Josh Okogie, made contact on his back. Okogie fell, and I think he landed on his head, and nothing got called. I'm like, that's absolutely crazy. But besides that, those 2 games, I think the common thread was the Jazz, they went on a run in both games. I think the first one was a little bit more of a run, but they were able to close the gap to a 4-point deficit. And then in the second game, they ended up losing by 14, so they ended up losing by double digits in the second game. But I think the common thread was really just they look lost on defense. They don't seem to know where they're supposed to be on defense as far as switching and pick and rolls and all that stuff. And in the second game, Karl-Anthony Towns in crunch time was giving up back-to-back possessions. The Jazz were eating in the paint in crunch time in the fourth quarter, and that's something to where I know Cat, he's not a good defensive player. Can you just be okay on defense? Just at least put yourself in position to alter dude's shot once in a while. But I think besides that, I think the Wolves, they've been doing pretty much okay with what they had, with the injuries that they've had. And you could tell when they go up against the Jazz, they kind of play each other really tough. Ricky Rubio does, because he's like, you guys should have never got rid of me in the first place. And the Wolves, they're like trying to stick it to Ricky Rubio. And that second game, you could tell Cat had a little bit more to prove because he got in early foul trouble in that first game. But he was trying to prove a point to Rudy Gobert. There was one play in particular where Cat had Gobert out on the three-point line with the ball in his hand. He took one step to the left and drove to the basket and left Rudy Gobert and finished with a slam. And you could tell that got him amped up. And it's like, Karl Anthony Towns looks so goofy. He looks like his body movement looks so clumsy that he looks like he has no business doing the types of moves that he does, but he's really, really good at it. So I can't blame the dude. But he actually showed up. He did really well. But Rudy Gobert, his presence was felt too because he had a block on Cat. This dude had like 10 dunks throughout that 2-game span. And there was one play where Dario Saric could have had an easy layup in the lane, in the paint. But Rudy Gobert's presence, he didn't even jump. Gobert didn't even jump. He was going to let Saric go ahead and get it. But Saric was scared, super scared that Gobert was going to jump up, that he kind of panicked and didn't even go for a shot. Kind of dished it off like a bad pass to Karl Anthony Towns. And Gobert ended up slapping it away. So I think, and honestly, Ricky Rubio, he's a great playmaker. And Donovan Mitchell, I thought he was more of like a Carmelo Anthony, kind of an Andrew Wiggins type, but maybe a little bit more efficient, but not by much. He's actually, the last couple of games, he's been a pretty decent playmaker. So, you know, the Jazz, they're a really good team. And I think the Wolves, they're just honestly just still trying to find their way. I still think they're a better team than with Tibbs as the coach. Ryan Saunders, I think he's going to be a really good coach. I'd be very interested if they give him the full-time gig. I still think they're a better team. They're just trying to find their way. That's all. But with Andrew Wiggins, I will say this. That Lakers game, the 3 games ago against the Lakers before they went on the 2-game winning streak losing streak against the Utah Jazz, that game they won against the Lakers, there was a little bit where Andrew Wiggins was playing some point guard. And that's because, you know, you're out of point guards. Like Jared Bayless was basically your starting point guard. And Andrew Wiggins had to play a little bit point guard at one point. And I thought to myself, the few times he did, I was like, this is actually, he's not bad. Like, he actually made a couple of good plays and a couple of good passes. And normally with Andrew Wiggins, I'm like, I'm not falling for this trap where, okay, he'll have one good game out of like 10, and then he'll go on to be an underwhelming player that he's used to being. But with him, considering him as like a point guard for the team, I was like, maybe there could be something there. I kind of fell for the trap again because as a playmaker, as a point guard, you don't have time to loaf around like he does as an off guard or as an off wing player off the ball, where he kind of stands around at the 3-point line, never really cuts to the basket or moves around without the ball. And then when he does get the ball, he just takes dumbass shots all the time. But as a playmaker, as a point guard, if you have a little bit decency at IQ, you have no choice. You don't have time to loaf around. You have to be thinking, okay, where's the cut going to be to where I can get past the defense, draw in more defenders, and look for the open guy. Or if there's an open shot that I can just go ahead and take it. And Andrew Wiggins was still just taking dumbass shots, and his dribbling just isn't there to be a point guard. So the little bit that I saw with the Lakers, I was like, oh, okay. With the Utah Jazz, it was absolutely abysmal. And he had just stupid turnovers. I'm talking about he can dribble, not as a point guard, losing the ball just with no defense on him, just kind of trying to do a little fancy stuff and losing the basketball and still taking stupid shots. Those 2 games against the Utah Jazz, the first game, Andrew Wiggins, he had what? Where are we? 3 assists and 5 turnovers. The second game at Minnesota, he had 4 assists and 4 turnovers. That's not going to get it done. So it's like I'm trying to sit here and find a shining light for Andrew Wiggins, but I just can't do it. But something that I found out, or something that came to me to where a light bulb went off in my head, is maybe a solution for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And you see, here's what it is. On Monday morning, so this podcast will be out on Tuesday. On Monday morning, I heard like a noise in my house, and I was like, oh, is somebody breaking in my... Everybody that has a house that's living in there, that's not living in their parents' house or whatever, even if you're living in your parents' house, okay, fine. You imagine, you kind of fantasize like someone breaking into your house, and you're like, oh, if someone... I know exactly what I'm going to do. I got this, I got that. I'm going to make it. Oh, it's time. It's about to happen. I'm ready. I've been prepared for this for years to come. Let's go. I was like, man, somebody in the house. I turned the light on, and I see this fat-ass dude downstairs in my basement. I'm like, who the hell is this guy with this red suit? I'm like, hey, what are you doing in my house? And he turns around with this big-ass white beard. He's like, I'm Santa Claus. I'm like, Santa Claus? What the hell are you doing here? Christmas is over with. It's been over with for a month. And he's sitting there trying to put Christmas presents down underneath my mini bar because me and my wife, we put the Christmas tree away. Well, really, my wife did. But anyways, trying to put presents down underneath the mini bar. I'm like, what are you doing here, Santa? He's like, Christmas is here for a second time. Realistic, Randy. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, turn the TV on. So I turned the TV on and turned it to ESPN. And the very first thing that I saw, Anthony Davis has requested a trade to be traded away from the New Orleans Pelicans. And I looked back and I was like, oh, man, that's crazy. And he was gone. Santa Claus was gone. I was like, oh, that's magic. That's crazy. So I was like, oh, I mean, that kind of sucks. But, okay, I kind of feel bad for the Pelicans. Okay, whatever. And then I saw something on Twitter, Bleacher Report. They was like, man, the New Orleans fans, they're taking nonstop L's because they talked about a week before that, whereas the Saints lost in their fashion that they did in the NFC Championship game with the non-PI call, and now their star NBA player wants out of New Orleans. I was like, oh, man, that sucks. I was like, you know what? I said last week on the podcast, screw the Saints, and I really do mean it, screw them, because the NFC Championship game, that was payback. That was karma for what you guys got away with in 2009, that NFC Championship game. I was like, it's that kind of sucks. I'm not going to carry that energy onto the Pelicans because, quite honestly, I did like the Pelicans. I like Anthony Davis, and they shouldn't have let Boogie go. That was absolutely stupid. And then another light bulb went on my head, and I was like, oh, I get it now. Gail Benson. Gail Benson not only owns the New Orleans Saints, she also owns the New Orleans Pelicans. So it's guilty by association. Screw the Pelicans and screw the Saints. Oh, it was music to my soul. I was so happy to see that and suddenly to realize that, to where I'm like, okay, the NFC Championship game, losing to the Rams the way you did, that's karma. All right, fine, whatever. The Pelicans, as far as losing Anthony Davis, eventually losing it, because, all right, let's get to my scenario. The Pelicans will never agree to this, but okay, let's say you can swindle them, be like, hey, listen, Andrew Wiggins, hey, he can't thrive with Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns is a selfish player. He's taking all the shine away from Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins needs his own team, and the New Orleans Pelicans can give him that. You can play him as a point guard. Hey, look, only show him footage from the Lakers game. Don't show him the Jazz footage from the Jazz games that he had the last two games. Show him footage from the Lakers game. He can play point guard. Oh, look at all the explosive plays he can do. And he's only in the first year of what, a 5-year super max contract or max contract, whatever. You can have him for 4 more years. You can do it. And we'll take Anthony Davis for a year. It's okay. It's fine. But anyway, they'll never go for it. But hey, maybe you can go for Drew Holiday. So a couple of folks floating that out. I think you do need to upgrade at point guard. I was saying Terry Rozier, but if you can get Drew Holiday, that'd be just as good. But moving on from that, NFC Championship game, that's karma. Losing Anthony Davis, that's on the Pelicans. And look, this is just a hunch from me as far as how this whole thing is going down, as far as why Anthony Davis is wanting to leave or why he's wanting to leave. If you remember last year in the middle of the season, Boogie Cousins, DeMarcus Cousins, he tore his Achilles. Okay, he was out for the second half of the season. Okay, fine. In the offseason, he was looking for contract offer. He's a free agent, okay? They didn't, according to Boogie Cousins, the Pelicans, nobody else really offered any offers to DeMarcus Cousins. He apparently, according to his words, took the only offer that he got, and that was with the Golden State Warriors. And the reason why I was so livid that he went to the Warriors is because, first of all, I was livid for the fact that he went to the Warriors because I'm like, you don't need him. You already are going to win the next 4 straight championships. Who gives a damn? But not only that, if it's true what DeMarcus Cousins said, that is stupid on the other 29 GMs or owners in the league. If you had any type of fear of DeMarcus Cousins and his torn Achilles, saying he can't come back, oh, there's too much risk there, and you're trying to compare him to Kobe Bryant and what he went through, that's stupid. And I said this in real time. I got receipts. I'm documented and saying this on my podcast and on Facebook and on Twitter. I said this exact thing. I wish my Dallas Mavericks would have signed Boogie Cousins to a max contract because I said this. His game is all skill. He is not athletic by any means whatsoever. He's not jumping out the gym. He's not doing any killer crossovers. His game is literally all skill, shooting the basketball and being a good playmaker. That's his game. He's really smart. His IQ is really smart. All he needs to do is get his stamina and his rhythm back, and he's going to be back to form, back to Boogie form in absolutely no time. And I proved to be 100% right because look at this right now. DeMarcus Cousins, he's been back for 4 games. Actually, no, because technically tonight, as of this podcast, I believe this is his 5th game. But anyway, before the conclusion of this game that they're playing tonight on Monday night, DeMarcus Cousins has played 4 games, 4 complete games for the Golden State Warriors. Now, he's been on a minutes restriction because normally his career averages is around 33, 34 minutes per game. This year, so far in the 4 games with the Warriors, he's playing 21 minutes per game. And in those 21 minutes per game, he's shooting 46% from the field, 56% from 3, a career high, 13.5 points per game. And what does he got? 3.5 assists and 7.5 rebounds per game. And that's in 21 minutes a game. This dude is balling. The Pelicans are stupid. If you didn't offer him a contract because we're not sure of his injury, if he can come back, that's dumb. Because AD and Boogie, they had great chemistry together. So I don't want to hear nothing about that. And you could tell that kind of rubbed AD the wrong way, where I think Boogie was talking about, hey, this could have been something great. We could have made something good together. Boogie just wants his money, man. When he was trying to stay with the Kings, he was like, I'm just trying to be loyal and stay. He just wants his money. I would have offered him a max contract, and I would have been right. That was stupid. So the NFC Championship game, that's karma. The Pelicans, as far as losing your star NBA player, that's you shooting yourselves in the foot. So, yeah, the Wolves, they probably won't get Anthony Davis, but maybe they can get Drew Holiday. That'll be something. But you know what? I hope they do this. They won't do this. But I hope every visiting stadium that the Saints and the Pelicans go to next year, maybe even started this year, like after Anthony Davis gets traded, they do like a little, like you know how they introduce players? They introduce players on the big-ass TVs, and they have music and stuff like that. I hope they get something to where they have Anthony Davis doing, like, the Rock-type WWE type of introduction where he's, like, trying to do the people's eyebrow. Like, I'm trying to do the people's eyebrow right now. I can't do it. I guess I just lift up my eye or whatever. I can't do it. But except he does it with his famous unibrow, and he just goes, if you smell what New Orleans is losing. The Saints lost. The Pels lost. And Slash comes in with the guitar solo. And they show like the Saints losing off that non-PI call. And then they show Anthony Davis dunking with a Pelicans jersey left and right. That would be amazing. I love all of this sorcery that's happening in the state or the city of New Orleans, only for the Saints and the Pelicans. I got nothing else against nothing against New Orleans as a city, or nothing against any other teams that they got over there. But Gail Benson, she's the owner of both teams, and you went on that rant last week talking about integrity, we deserve fairness and equality on the field and fair officiating and blah blah blah. But you didn't give a damn about that in the 2009 NFC Championship game when it was completely tilted and unfair in your favor. Get that crap out of my face. I hope you keep suffering like this forever. So anyway, do this twice a week. Mediokr Best Sports Podcast on Realistic Randy. Tuesdays podcast on SKOR North. And Saturdays, you can find it on my YouTube channel. Just search Realistic Randy. Twitter at Realistic_Randy. Facebook at Realistic Randy. We will see you on Saturday. Peace.